Hello again, welcome back. I'm now going to look at damaged submarine films, which is a little subgenre that you don't get very often. But I've watched three of them in the past 2 weeks, so it's been something. One is Grey Lady Down, which I know Solitary One's already covered. There's K-19, the Widowmaker, and also Kursk, the Last Mission. Now, the reason why you don't see many of these films is the subject matter is a bit depressing because potentially people will die in these situations. Now, Grey Lady Down is actually a fictional film based on a book. K-19 and Kursk are both based on fact. So it's a genre that is a bit depressing. So it's not like a something like October situation where you've got exciting sub chases and things like that. No, this is like a sub gets just injured somewhere, and then they have to try and rescue them, and it's a rescue is the main part of the plot, or if they have to rescue themselves from a bad situation and avoid causing more trouble for other people, and it's all about saving people and saving lives rather than actually being a hero or anything. So all three of these films are good. Some are better than others, but they're good in different ways. But they're all flawed. The fun thing is, two of them are about how rubbish the Russian government is, because the two faction ones are based in Russia, and it's pretty brutal on the communist countries and their regimes, and even the post-communist countries. In the case of Kursk, it is pretty brutal about them. And Grey Lady Down is based on like what Americans do if there's a problem with a sub and their technology. So although the technology shown here has been updated quite a bit since then, but I'll start with Grey Lady Down, directed by David Green, and the actual packaging is good. The quality of the print is good. So good you can see the dodgy model work at times. You have a good cast with Ned Beatty, Stacey Keach, David Carradine, Charlton Heston. You have some really good extras, including a 50-minute talk about submersibles by a person who writes about film, but also did this for years in his previous life. So there's lots of good stuff in this disc. I'd recommend this disc. It's definitely worth getting because the film's good and entertaining. You might not want to buy it full price. I bought this on sale, and that's probably the best thing you can do with this one is get it on sale because it's not a great film, but it is very enjoyable. So, Grey Lady Down is based on a book, and in it, what happens is a submarine is coming back to port during a fog, and Charlton Heston's character, he was a captain, but this is his last run around before he enters the kind of higher echelons of the administration of the Navy. He's going to get a desk job basically and start to administrate. And so he's getting a promotion, and his number two is played by Ronnie Cox is going to take over the sub. So as he's going in, he wants to go in with a sentimental thing of being above water rather than being below water. The trouble is, it's during a fog, and a ship with a dodgy radar rams into it. Now, this is one of those things that for the film to actually exist, they have to have people behave incompetently, which will allow the film to happen. This is something that Gravity got a lot of criticism for, is the sense of the NASA has a lot of things to avoid what happened in Gravity happening. There was a lot of procedures to avoid that, but the film ignored completely, so the film could happen. And the same thing here, like if they're in fog, they'd be very close to the radar. If anything was remotely close, they would avoid it. Instead, they keep going and ask the captain at the last minute, and they say, "Oh, the captain's having a party downstairs or something." But it's like in real life, they would not let that happen. It would be sorted well before. And they also have the thing that rams into them, their radars off, and they barely see until the last minute. So that's kind of the thing they have to do to get the plot moving. And it is as tacky as you think. And even as someone who doesn't know anything about Navy procedure is like, that doesn't sound right. That sounds like example of not using common sense. But it gets the submarine sunk, and it goes down to almost crush depth at the time, because crush depth in the 70s was different from crush depth now, because they have nuclear submarines and they have higher density metal on it, so it can go down much further now. But it's down well below where you can leave the sub and swim up. You're going to die. You're going to the bends and die. So they have to have a pressurized submarine come down and help link it to the sub and get these people out. The problem is where they crashed, debris falling onto the area they need to actually clear, plus the sub is sinking, is off to the side a little bit. And the area around about it is very volatile. So, and also they're all stuck in one part of the sub. Half the sub is ripped apart, and the only thing keeping the water out is certain doors, and these doors could go. So they've added a lot of tension ideas in different parts of the film to make sure that there's enough plot to keep the film going for 2 hours. And it works. It really does work. It's like there's enough genuine tension here to keep you interested. Even though the film is shot like a 70s movie, which means some of the stuff does feel a bit TV-ish, like some of the settings and some of the lighting. And the submarine's a bit big for what a submarine would be. And some of the dialogue can be a bit TV soap opera. But the film still works. And mainly it's due to casting. The direction's pretty good for what it is, but it's one of those films, it can be directed by any professional director who knew what they're doing. The idea's solid enough, and if you've got a competent director, they would do a good job with this story. It's not like, there's nothing like, oh, this could have fallen apart once the director. No, this is a very solid story. It's put together properly. Something Spielberg could have done a much better job of it. Something John Carpenter could have killed in this film idea. But they get someone who knows what they're doing. It's just not as good as some other films. But the casting's good. Stacey Keach is a guy who's brought in to actually salvage the situation, figure out how to get them out of the submarine. Charlton Heston's a guy in the submarine trying to keep people calm, even though he doesn't really have a clue whether they're going to survive or not. His XO, Ronnie Cox, has a concussion, and he knows it was Charlton Heston's fault that this thing happened. Like, he knows that it was like, there's no way that this was not his fault. Which becomes annoying, actually. It's like, yeah, it should have been like in one scene. Instead, it goes on and makes the character look weaker, and it's just a weak plot device. Ronnie Cox is a good actor, so he managed to pull it off, but the writing is pretty dire there. It's like, you know, you don't need to. This is a one scene situation where it would have worked a lot better, and they could have resolved the differences. Also, he's got a concussion, which could have been used to make it really interesting, because he's still trying to work while having a concussion, and it's never really exploited right. The best part of the film is David Carradine and Ned Beatty, who are brought in like halfway through the film, and they're the submersible experts who can go down and actually find it takes away from the fact to find where it is. They have a rough idea where it is, but they're the ones who have to go and find it and then see how bad the damage is and what they can do. And they've got a submersible, and they have to deal with the Navy politics to get to, because they don't want Ned Beatty down because he's a big guy in this small sub, and it's like, well, why do we want him down there? It's because he knows what he's doing. You know, It's like they try and put someone down early on to do his job, and it's a disaster because he's not really he's qualified, but not qualified to the same degree Ned Beatty's character is for working this machine. Which the expert points out in the documentary, that's ridiculous. That would not happen. It would be like, just do the people who know what they're doing. So it's a plot device, but it works fine because you actually want a reason why if you've done it a few times to find it first. It adds to tension. So it's one of those things. It's like, yeah, it's not exactly realistic, but it works for what it is, and it makes Carradine character look a lot cooler as he deals with this nonsense. And the thing is, they do take care to let Stacey Keach's character actually be logical at the same time. And it's like he's not doing it just for the sake of it. It's like he wants experts down there. So it works fine, even though you know it's pushing it a little bit. But Carradine and Beatty have a great relationship. They're the fun part of the film because Carradine enjoys teasing Beatty, and Beatty knows it, and they have fun at each other's expense. And this is probably one of the most relaxed we'll see David Carradine in the film. He's very relaxed. This is a guy who knows what he's doing. You know, he's playing a character who understands his own technology, and he's very confident, and he's playful, and it just works. And every time we have having Beatty together, they just work so well together. And it really helps because they are driving the second half of the film, like going down and finding information out and bringing it back up and doing all the kind of grunt work, which could have been really meandering if they didn't have a fun set of characters there. If the funny thing is, we watch these 70s films, you see young actors come up or in the background. If you watch Midway, you see Tom Selleck. In this film, you see Christopher Reeve just before he got the Superman part. So I think this film was coming out not long before Superman. He must have just done this just before he got the part. Because he looks exactly the same as he does in Superman. He just looks like Superman ready to go. So that's kind of fun. You have like Stephen McHattie, who's a character actor in Canada, in a small part here. And he has some fun stuff as well. I mean, everybody seems to enjoy themselves. I mean, Heston is a bit arch because Heston was used to the 50s and 60s acting. And it's good and bad in the sense that he can keep the film going, he can keep the mood of the film going, but he's working with other actors of a different, more modern style than him, and they make him look a bit arch at times. But it works fine because the character's meant to be a bit standoffish to the rest of the crew. So it works fine, he knows what he's doing, and he keeps the plot moving below the surface, really. But it's much more fun when you've got Carradine or Beatty or Stacey Keach. They're just more enjoyable to watch, really, which is kind of the thing. And even Ronnie Cox is a bad part. He's more fun to watch because he's a more relaxed performance. So it's kind of like the other characters I like seeing more. So the film is just very enjoyable. Some of the effects have dated pretty badly, but it works really well. Now we're going to go to K-19, The Widowmaker, directed by Catherine Bigelow. This was post Point Break and Blue Steel and Near Dark. And it was actually a film after Strange Days. I think she did Weight of Water in between. I'm not sure if it came. I think it was shot before and came out after Widowmaker. But it was like a period where she had a few bombs and she was one of the things. It was before Hurt Locker, where she was known as a talented director, but she hadn't really had a big hit for a while. So she got this film, which I think she developed, called The Widowmaker, which was about the K-19 submarine in the early 60s, which is the Russian flagship, the one that proved to America they have the nuclear capability just to America, and they have a threat, so America should take them seriously. This is before the Cuban Missile Crisis. So the communist Russia, which has lots of regimes and lots of problems, insists that this thing goes through quick. And because Liam Neeson plays the captain, it's not going as well as they'd hoped for him. Because he was too much of a crewman, the crew loved him, but he wasn't as hard as the Russians wanted. So they replaced him with Harrison Ford's character, and he remains as the XO to the new captain because it's a flagship, and Harrison Ford's character is known as someone who can get stuff done. And he comes on and they launch the submarine with lots of things they have to do. They have to get to Antarctica, fire a missile, show they can do it. Then they have to go down to towards Cuba and to just prove they can get near America. So it's things so they can claim to America, well, look what we can do to you too, so shut up. So that was the idea. But unfortunately, they were a bit cheap in some of the technology, and they weren't the most organized group of people. So when Ford comes on, he has to get the crew up to speed. The crew have been working hard and trying to get everything done, but they're not the most efficient crew. And Ford pushes them drill after drill, even as they're going through, even as they're doing stuff. That's a job. He still drills them so they always know how to react, and it gets results. But it clashes with the crew. So when they're on the actual mission, it's tense, but they're starting to get somewhere. They're starting to see how things are going. So Peter Skarsgård plays this character who comes in at the last minute because they find a nuclear technician drunk one day, and Ford fires him, even though he's one of the best in the fleet. And he's like, "No, I can't have you like this." And he brings in Skarsgård, who's this guy who has never done this before. He's just fresh out of the academy, and he has this responsibility for the flagship of Russia, which seems to go well for a long time. Everything's going well, and suddenly there's a leak inside the reactor. It's not a leak they can solve because it's inside the reactor, like well down, well below everything else. So they can't pull it out and sort the leak. All they can do is try and avoid it actually melting down. So that becomes the second half of the film. Is like, how do you avoid a meltdown? As we're close to Russia, we're close to America, and a Russian ship, and if this thing goes off, it'll start World War III. And how do we react? And what's worse is because Russia's so cheap, they don't actually have radiation suits. They have diving suits in lieu of radiation suits. So it's like, oh god. So there's no one go in this room and survive. Basically, it's like if you're in the room to do something, you're going to die. So it's like, how do you get people in to do this thing? It's even done. It allows water to go in the system and flood the system so that it can keep the temperature down to actually keep the thing from going off. And it's a horrible situation to be in, and the film's all about how horrible the situation is, how brutal it is. And this is a really good film. This is my favourite of the 3 films, to be honest. It's not perfect. It goes on too long. And I've got the thing is, if an American actor and an Irish actor playing Russians, so their accent's not going to be perfect. But after a minute or two, they're not doing like really stereotypical Russian accents. They're just doing light Russian accents, so you can hear the actor's voice, so the performance isn't mannered, and it just allows the acting to work. And it just works. It's just like it's very similar to what they do later on with Chernobyl, where it's like the attitude of everyone in Russia. Russia's a massive place. People have different dialects, and there's no perfect one. And they can do that here as well. And it's like, and it's the old World War II thing of World War II movie thing of like, it's a fantasy. We know this is not real. Let's just make believe here and tell the story, which is what they do, and it works fine. Because after a few minutes, you're into the drama, and that's probably the weakest part of the film is that. But also, it works in a sense because you've got Harrison Ford playing against type. He's normally the hero, and here he's playing the guy who's the hard ass and who just alienates people all the time with his decisions. And apparently, it's one of Ford's favorite performances. It's something he's brought up recently of a film he liked that didn't do well, of his own films. And it is really good. It's a really terrific film, and he's really good in it because he's obviously very interested in this subject, very interested in what he's doing. Neeson's actually good too. Neeson can be kind of missing films. If he's engaged in a film, he can be a really good actor. If he's picking up the paycheck, he can be rough. But he's committed in this one. He's interested in this one, and all the supporting actors are all terrific too. Peter Sarsgaard's very good. He's the young guy who's in over his head and makes mistakes, but the fault is not his for the meltdown. It's like he has to deal with something that was not his fault, and it's basically a death sentence that he's scared of because he knows basically he's probably going to die in this situation. And it's also a case of people having to make bad decisions, and there's no like good decision, and there's no way around it. And they're dealing with bureaucracy back home that's going to blame them for everything, even though it was their fault. The mistakes happened, and it's a pie in the face to the Russian government. All this that happens. So this is a terrific film, very evenly paced. Watermark's edited it for Kevin Bigelow, so the camera shots are dynamic without being over the top. When she was younger, she was more show-offy as a director, but she kind of calmed down to get older. And Much is very good at placing them together to cut out the fat and actually keep the point of the scenes. And he's very good at knowing when to cut to people and when not to cut to people and things like that. I watched all of these films on the projector, and so you got to see the big screen, and you could really appreciate the direction this film on a projector is really well done. I don't think you get the same effect on the small screen, this one. So it's definitely worth trying to catch the biggest screen as possible. So that was probably my favourite of the three. Kursk, The Last Mission, directed by Thomas Vinterberg, who was one of the Dogma guys. It's probably the weakest of the three for me, even though it's objectively a better film than Grey Lady Down. But I also think it has some show-offy stuff that's very Dogma 89 or 98 or whatever. And there's a bit that they changed the screen ratio from 185 or what's it, 40 feet or 185 to 235 to 1 when you're in the area with the people early on. It's a squeeze ratio, and then when you go to see, it becomes a 235 to 1, and then when you go back at the end, it's back to the old ratio, which is just show off, and it doesn't add anything to the film, and it's very annoying. And that's kind of the thing, is they couldn't help themselves from doing that. The film has other flaws in the sense of it does feel too long. It's another one. Like, all of these films should have been 20 minutes shorter. Each one could have lost 20 minutes for efficiency. But this one, you feel it more than others because not much happens. Once the sub sinks, it's really about the bureaucracy above in Russia and people trying to help these people trapped in the sub. And the people, and it's also them, the sub, try to survive and do different things to survive. And it goes back and forward throughout. But there's just a lot of fat in this thing. It just feels like it was like, just take away some of this, because there's some things that are relevant one time, but after you've seen them a few times, they're far less relevant, and you just feel like I'm not getting to the point quickly enough to make this impactful. And by the time we get to the end, it feels like you've been in the film for too long. So the end has less impact than it should have because the film's too long. It starts off well. It's a very Deer Hunter-esque feeling at the start, where you've got all these Navy guys who are waiting for the next ship or the next submarine rotation. They don't have much money. This is Russia after Glasnost. Now they're trying to survive. One of their friends are getting married, so they have to sell their watches to get all the wedding stuff put together. And then after it's over, they have to go out to do their duty on the Kursk, which is the flagship Russian ship. Another flagship Russian ship that has problems. Russia's problems with flagships. I would not want to be a flagship in Russia after this film. So they're doing their thing on the seabed. They're doing an exercise, and as the people above are pretty much saying that the Russian fleet is actually starting to rot away. They're not replacing anything. They're running out of money. The fleet's far smaller than it used to be. The Kursk is the flagship sub, and it needs to be renovated. Nothing's going right at all, and no one wants to admit it. And all the American and British ships are so much better than what they've got, and it's like it's just this thing of the poor Russians are just the people working there are in terrible conditions, and it's like they're still expected to deliver even though everything's going wrong. And then again, a manufacturing error causes all these problems where they're going to shoot a torpedo out the sub, and they notice a flaw in the torpedo, but they need to get it out the sub quick. And before they can fire it, the thing goes off and burns through all the other torpedoes, but they all go off at the same time as well. And then half the ship's gone, and they just boom. They manage to close the doors and have a handful of people left in the sub. No one's sure they survived. Their families don't know anything. And basically, it takes a while for the actual submersibles to reach them to try and find out if anyone's still alive. And then when they realize there's someone still alive, they have to do a rescue thing. The Russians have to do a rescue thing. And this is when they realize that they've sold their best equipment to two different places. Like, their best rescue submersible has been sold to a company that does Titanic submersible dives. The one that left has a flaw with its it's meant to have its suction cap thing that fits on. Should have been replaced but wasn't because it was too expensive. They've only got one battery for this stuff as well, and they should have had two, but they sold the second one to someone else. You couldn't make this up. So they've got one terrible submersible to try and rescue them, and the Russian government will not actually admit to this flaw. And this is leaked to Colin Firth's character, who's a British naval guy who knows something's going wrong, and he's trying whatever he can to help them. And because he knows the Russian admiral, and he knows he's a decent guy. He's a bit gruff, but he's decent. He wants to save these guys. And it's one of those things is they bring him in against the government's wishes, which causes problems too. And the whole film is based about these guys trying to survive under the water in the sub and not let it flood, and trying to survive their own paranoia versus the families trying to get the Russian government to do something, and the Russian government completely failing to do anything in the film. And Max von Sydow appears as the representative of the Russian government, and this is one of his final roles. He looks pretty fair in this film, but he's still got a great voice. And so, yeah, I feel a lot of these people making this film did it for their interest in subject matter. Leah Sado plays a wife who's trying to focus the government to do something for them, because the Russian government in this film does not care about the families. They care about their reputation. And that's what von Sydow portrays through the film. A country that expects loyalty but doesn't give it in return. And basically the upshot of the film is, by the time they agree to let the British go do it, it's too late. So it's a tragedy. Now, the reason why I said it was too long earlier on was the fact is all these scenes are interesting. You've got some really, the build to interesting places, and they all go on too long. It's just this thing of trimming, like just knowing when your film is just feels a bit long, and you start trimming away and try and cut out what you don't need, and not trim like brutally, like take out like everything. It's just like just go through and just take little things out that are a bit flabby, little things out you you don't need, that would have just given you the momentum, because the film, by the time you get to the end when they die, your concentration has gone a little bit because the film is taking too long to get there. And they had, either in the scripting or in the directing, they hadn't taken a few little steps you needed so that the end would actually hit you. Instead, it's like, yeah, okay, that's sad, but I guess that's life. It just doesn't hit you the way it should. I think it's maybe all these films were around about 2 hours mark, 2 hours 10 mark. But yeah, they'd all feel a bit long, because I think a submarine in peril, there's only so much you can do. Because it's basically a rescue film, and you don't want to be stuck in this film doing this constantly all the time and making people bored. I think that's the problem that all three films have, is they just stick around too long and they just don't cut the fat when they need to. So it is what it is. But they're still all very enjoyable films. But of the three, I would say K-19 is the best one. I mean, Kursk is the most realistic one. It's the most downbeat one. But it trades in the kind of grimness a bit too much and a bit too repetitively. So it kind of loses marks for where it's actually accurate by not pacing out what an audience can watch and remain interested in. And K-19 seems to be one of the most balanced of the bunch, even though when it was released, it was called boring by a lot of people. I just thought it was very well done. So it's definitely one worth seeing. I mean, Kursk and K-19 I saw on streaming. Really down, of course, I've got on the Blu-ray disc. I hope you enjoyed this. I'll be back with one final video this week, and I'll see you then. Bye for now.